The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's the big Wednesday after.
With another storm on its way.
And another
And I'm not talking about an election.
Yeah. Oh, and actually we are too. So, you know, I guess we're going to talk about that right out of the gate. And, you know, I see the headline, Durfee override approval, a step in the right direction, with a quote from Paul Coogan. Well, I kind of half agree and half disagree, because again, it's what they did through their entire campaign, which is give half truths and misleading information. Yes, building a new school is a step in the right direction, and we actually agreed with that premise. Doing it with a, as they said again, because a debt exclusion is a form of override. Anytime you can exceed 2.5, it's an override. It's pure semantics if you try to manipulate those words to make it appear that it's not some type of override. And the reality is that it's not a step in the right direction. The building is, but the fact is the method of financing isn't, because it imposes more taxes on a community that truly can't afford it, and a segment of that community that truly can't afford it. And you know, I wasn't there to make comment yesterday because obviously I've been under the weather a little bit for the last week or so, and I really didn't want to go down there and infect everybody else. So I stayed home and wheezed and
hacked up a lung. And
I'm trying to beat this thing. But I you know, in good faith, they were looking for comment, and I did write a comment last night, and I got it in before 11 o'clock in order to try to get it at least a perspective of the paper, and it wasn't really part of the article. And I believe, CJ, you've got a copy of what I wrote, so if you could kind of just read it. It's short and fairly succinct, I think. I can't hear you.
March 6th, 2018. Okay. Let me begin by thanking the members of People for a Better Way for their efforts on behalf of the taxpayers and citizens of Fall River. We waged an uphill battle against a well-financed lineup of big money and big business. Our grassroots message needed far more time to penetrate the media saturation of the more tax movement. This is not the last battle. We have time before this override begins. We'll be looking at all options to provide tax relief to our citizens. Options like charter review, demanding a stop to the endless new positions, stipends, and enormous pay increases to the very top. Electing candidates committed to fiscal responsibility. We must bring back terms like no frills and lean when we look at our city government. It will not be easy, but time will be on our side. Tolstoy said, the two most powerful warriors are patience and time. When they keep spending and taxing, they will make our point for us. Why? Because when most of them drive home tonight to Dartmouth, Carver, and other places not Fall River, they will smile and leave it in their rearview mirror. While we await our new taxes and bills, thank you again to all who voted and those who worked so hard for the invisibles, the people with the least who will suffer the most. If you want to help, contact us on Facebook at Citizens Alliance for Accountability in Government. Robert Camara.
So that basically says it all. You know, this is not a step in the right direction. I mean, they've done what they've done for hundreds of years and figured out a way where the poorest segment of the population can subsidize the richest, as we do with our TIFs and we did with the banks when they sold the poor people mortgages they couldn't afford, and then the poor people lost their houses and the banks got bailed out. And I brought one of my favorite books of all time, and I'll give you a quick picture here. Labor's Untold Story. That's the original cover of the original, one of the original prints. And I will read you this quote. Testifying before a Senate committee investigating relations between labor and capital in 1883, a worker said, quote, "The employer has pretty much the same feelings towards the men as he had toward his machinery. He wants to get as much out as he can at the cheapest rate." And Samuel Gompers, who, by the way, was one of the leaders of the labor movement, one of the pioneers, told the same Senate committee that a manufacturer had told him, and listen to this quote, this is 1883, "I regard my employees as I do a machine, to be used to my advantage, and when they are old and of no further use, I cast them into the street." And you know something? They can say what they want, and they can talk about their altruism, and they can talk about everything else, but you know, we got the hashtag Me Too movement and everything else, and people get offended when they're referred to in the context. But in reality, there's kind of a little Freudian slip every once in a while when people get irritated and say, "Go to Russia, move out, you can't afford it, tough." It implies that they're categorizing you as lesser people because you work hard and because you didn't have the, you know, the benefits that they had or the insider information to get where they are, or didn't kiss enough butt or get elected to some office where you could ascend the ladder of the public trough. You are somehow less valuable. That's one of the first factors when you have things like Holocausts and things. They dehumanize the people. And the reality is that, look, this city is this city, and the people in it are being just relentlessly attacked. That's why this is not over. I said there's no concession here. This is the beginning of another movement, not only on this building, but on the entire attitude, and I said in my statement, more, you know, a special assistant, got 2 deputy chiefs and a special assistant, and then another special assistant to the special assistant somewhere else, and another new job, and another massive pay raise. Uncontrolled spending like we've got no problem at all, absolutely no problem at all financially, and then we ask for a debt exclusion. It doesn't, it's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. All it is again, the people that can afford it the least get impacted the most, because just like Amazon got a TIF, and all the big companies that don't really need the TIF because they pay crap wages like they did in 1883, they get all the breaks, we get all the taxes. The system is broken. And unfortunately, the only people that can fix the system are the people. You have to rise up, and we have to begin to elect people in that city council who won't sit there and talk a good game with their alligator mouths attached to their canary butts and then just vote it in. They'll protest, and then they'll do exactly what they want. Spend more money, spend more money, spend more money. Well, guess what? We got till 22 till this thing hits. Let's see if we can go without a maximum increase. Let's see if we can actually go with a slight decrease in taxes between now and 22, and then I will say, okay. But that's not going to happen, because the rates are going to go up. We're going to continue to bond. There's always going to be another project on the horizon, and the only answer is to control costs. And you know what? Forget about it. I mean, we look at this administration has a month. Correct me or educate me, CJ. Has there been a month that we've ever seen a city council meeting without a pay raise or a new job or a stipend on it?
Not that I have seen.
I can't remember.
But you know what's very interesting, because you're talking about new jobs and stipends. You know, the special assistant to the mayor is a full-time job, but she's working 20 more hours part-time for CDA. And she's getting $10,000 for that because that's a part-time job. How is she working full-time and working part-time at the same time?
No, it's a federal agency. Didn't we go through this with Mayor Lambert?
Yeah, I think we did.
I think we did, and I think they lost, right?
That's right.
Yeah, but hey, look, maybe they think people don't have long memories, but you know, this is not the end of a problem.
No, it's
the beginning. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of an attitude. And in their case, it is a step in the right direction because they say, we dump a whole lot of money in it, use our employees and people who are beholden to us to work, and we're fighting against this little core group of people who don't have the resources, the money, and they can't get their employees to go do the work for us because guess what? We don't have any employees. We're just people and taxpayers. But we have the ultimate say at the polls. So, you know, Citizens Alliance for the Accountability in Government is going to be far more active than it has been in a long time. That's the reason that we created this organization, because we need to protect the average citizen. So this is a battle that is on far more fronts than this debt override. But the override is a symptom of the problem, the symptom of the disease, uncontrolled government spending, and we can't do it. We have to begin to rise up, and we're going to have to basically change history, because historically this city has never had major changes in the city council. But we're going to have major changes in the city council. We can't have people who are going to be yes men for every pay raise and every budget and have an attitude that, you know, you've got to get your taxes increased every year. It's mandatory because that's the way it is. This is America, as the superintendent said, but it's not. Taxes are a necessary evil. They're not something that is an automatic. The only thing that's automatic are politicians' pay raises and their friends' pay raises, like in our State House. They circumvented the idea that we had to approve their pay raises by giving themselves the power to give themselves a pay raise. But in the process, they also mandated that we're obligated every year to pay taxes, or somehow we're un-American. It's un-American to ask them to control their budget like we have to control ours. Somehow you're anti-Fall River, anti the kids. If you wanted to stay within budget and pay for this, even though there was a distinct possibility. You know, and again, I have to commend everybody who worked. You know, they knew that, you know, we were against a rock and a hard place from the get-go. They had already had their campaign in full swing, and, you know, they're all holding hands and singing songs, and you know, we had to try to get the word out to the people. And I sat in a restaurant yesterday and had lunch after a meeting on health care, where, again, they're trying to give us the business. But I sat in a meeting and I listened. There were conversations going all over. What did you vote? Oh, well, I don't want new taxes, but we need a new school. That wasn't the vote. I'd say about 85 to 90% of the people that I've listened to and engaged in a conversation had absolutely no idea what that vote was. To them, it was a vote about, we get a new Durfee. And if you vote against this, we don't get a new Durfee. And that wasn't true. There were options. But with all due respect to their campaign, they sold that pig in a poke. They sold that idea.
That's what campaigning's all about, though.
That's right.
And you know, I had a conversation with some of those people yesterday while we were waiting for polling numbers, and you know, they pointed out some, you know, very key points. If we had stayed focused, which we did, you and I stayed focused on this, on the fact that this is going to be increased taxes, there was no argument against that. Just like there was no argument against the fact that we needed a new Durfee. And oddly enough, both sides see eye to eye on many issues. The only issue we didn't see eye to eye on was the override.
Yeah.
Or the debt exclusion, or whatever you wanted to call it. Yeah. That was the only thing that we didn't see eye to eye on.
You're right, CJ, because, look, they knew that if we looked at this thing objectively and had a long period to evaluate it and get the financial disclosure, people would begin to understand it. And look, you know, like I said, kudos to them. They knew how they had to sell this. They had to sell this about, look, you're not going to get a Durfee, forget about it, throw up your hands. and they sold it. They sold that bill of goods to people. And
they sold that pig in a poke.
It's unfortunate, but they did it. But now this opens a door. What happens when Daimler Regional comes in? Oh, debt exclusion. What happens when the next project comes in? Debt exclusion.
Talbot.
And as I said, time's on our side. It seems that especially this administration and this council has no ability at all to look at the fact that how can you? It's convoluted. We're telling you that we need a debt exclusion because we can't afford it and we got to break this payment down to this small little incremental thing. But then our budget's like totally uncontrolled. Pay raises of 50% and 45%, while the low people are getting nothing. And we're just spending and spending and spending with no control. And that's the other thing they sold to the public. Years ago, and ironically enough, one of the people who was for this, of course I know that the political affiliations were there, was Carlton Viveris. And Carlton Viveris went many years without raising taxes. Because in those days, we had an electorate, most of whom have moved away and put Fall River in the rearview mirror, as I said, would never elect them because we had money in the bank. They watched how we spent our money. If we continued to just give massive pay raises to everybody, they would have rode him out on a rail, and he knew it. But that's gone. Goebbels hit it right on the head. You tell a lie long enough, and if it's big enough, the people will begin to believe it. They've now, the focus has shifted from a time when terms that I used before, lean government, no frills government, eliminate waste, cut fat, bare bones. These have been completely discarded from any discussion about government. It's about we need more money, we need more taxes, it's your job, your obligation to give us all the money we need, even if we're not spending it properly. And they've sold it. All you got to do is look at Sherry Atkinson, that program, Full Measure, virtually every Sunday after Meet the Press. And every once in a while, she has a program totally dedicated to massive government waste, billions of dollars, like the plane that they spent hundreds of billions of dollars on, and they knew from the get-go it couldn't fly. But some manufacturer made a lot of money. So this is what we're up against, and this is a community that obviously should be more sensitive to this, but they're too busy trying to go to work 3 jobs to make ends meet. But as I said, time's on our side. They're going to break everybody. They're going to even break, and if you look at the demographics of that vote, it was close for a little while. You look where it was close. It was close where the incomes were lower. You look at the more affluent areas of the city, okay, they don't care. They can say, I don't mind paying taxes. Well, I do. And even if I can afford taxes, I mind paying them if they're not being utilized properly. All taxes is our contribution to the city to provide us with the services that we feel are essential. That's what they are. They're not for gigantic pay raises to people and gaming the system by having one of your former campaign staff get a full-time job with the city and then slide her over and get her another part-time job so you can get another stipend. And now Kathy Ann's been the administrator for how many years? Now she's getting a stipend every other week. Now she's handling everything. She's got about 150,000 hats. which are just an excuse to give, stipends and pay raises. We got to control. The bottom line is, if we all got to bite the bullet together, the way it should be is we should all suffer in the bad times and prosper in the good times. When a city is financially solvent enough to give out pay raises, they should be to the workers and to the administrators. And when they can't give the police a contract, we shouldn't be giving $40,000 pay raises to people. I mean, it's just a matter, and this is a fight that's not going to go away. The only defender of your wallet is you. You're going to have to begin to get involved and realize that the city council is not like the local sewing club or the quilting club. You just don't elect your friends who gave you a chow mein sandwich because you like to watch them, on camera making remarks or something like that. It's a critical part of this community. They're the ones who control the purse strings. And if we don't put people on that council who are sensitive to what these kinds of abuses and pay raises and things do to the person who's living on $22,000 a year, the average income per capita in this city, they need to be replaced. It's that simple. We can barely hear you again, CJ.
Sorry about that. A lot of people who went and voted yesterday had the same problem with voting. They were thinking, which way do I vote? If I vote yes, I'm going to get high taxes. If I vote no, I'm voting against the children in the school. And that's why this was packaged perfectly by the yes side. They had students standing out holding signs. They had students during class hours, making this very clear, during class hours, your children were Facebooking and using social media. They were posting pictures. Teachers during class hours, while working, were campaigning on Facebook by posting pictures on what they have to deal with. That's not what you're paid to do. But that campaign worked. That campaign worked. They plucked on the heartstrings of the people. Yeah. And when you do that, it's effective.
Yeah, and the underlying theme was you're not going to get a Durfee because everybody, very, very few people, and as I said, I listened to that conversation. It actually kind of made my lunch difficult to digest. But I was listening to these conversations, and people were saying that over and over again. Well, these taxes are getting ridiculous, but we really do need a school. Yeah, well, that wasn't what we were voting on. But obviously, we started out in a hole. They had their campaign in full swing. They had their money raised. They had a nice, slick PowerPoint performance. And realistically, the only campaign you can ever run against big money like that is a grassroots campaign. And unfortunately, grassroots campaigns take a lot of time. It means basically knocking on people's door, engaging them in conversations, having meetings with small groups to basically clear the air and actually tell them what it is. I mean, even to this point, there's some of them still saying it's not an override, even though the Herald News calls it an override, the law calls it an override, and we all know that it's pure semantics, but it's spinology. And I just don't agree that we should be using spinology when it comes to the taxpayer and the children. Because those children are going to leave that edifice to mismanagement of funds, and that's what it is. And they're going to go home and suffer the consequences, many of these families, because everybody's lost sight. Who are the kids that are texting and Facebooking? The children of the kids who are part of this movement, the more affluent. The kids on a school lunch program aren't texting because their mothers and fathers are home trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills. And it has a tremendous impact on them. So You know, this is a tale of two cities, as it always is. And just like in 1883, you know, that's the way they feel. And they can feign altruism all they want. They can wrap themselves into, oh, he was always been a community activist and stuff like that. That's a network. Network of money men. And they call each other for donations, and you back my thing and I'll back yours. And what happens? What's the final outcome of that? The proof is very clear. It's a different set of demographic here, but fundamentally, actually, it is kind of the same. Because I always go back to the mortgage crisis. Predatory loan institutions sold mortgages to people who truly couldn't afford it with no regard of the ultimate impact. And when the bottom fell out and hundreds of thousands of people lost their homes and couldn't afford their mortgages, did they care? No, they ran right back to the politicians and got their banks bailed out. So they suffered absolutely nothing. So you can take your feigned altruism and you know what you can do with it. So because I know I know the way you truly feel, because I've negotiated against you many times, and I've seen your disregard for the average worker, because you got to fight for 1%, but they can get 50%. So, you know, you're talking to the proof is in the pudding. We've seen it time and time again. Who gets bailed out? When was the last time the little people got bailed out? When was the last time that the victims, when Polaroid up the road in the Sonnet shut down, every single person that worked in Polaroid that was a worker lost their pension, health care, out in the street like in 1883. Cast them out in the street. You know what happened to all the CEOs and all the upper management in Polaroid?
Golden parachutes.
Golden parachutes. I think the CEO got $5 million bucks. And you know what their excuse was? Excuse me. They needed to keep that group to reorganize the company. Really? You're the dummies that ran it into the ground. So I'm going to give you $5 million to run it into the ground again as a golden parachute?
Failure has its privileges.
That's right. And when you know, and what's the bottom line in that? The old adage: the rich get rich and the poor get poorer.
That's
and if
it.
that doesn't get you angry enough to stay involved, I don't know what is. So remember where we are. Citizens Alliance for Accountability in Government on Facebook.
Well, you know, the really interesting thing about this whole thing is normally in a real world, a new tax like this would have a mayor thrown out of office and a city council all removed. But that new tax isn't going to hit for 3 years, which gets them past the next election cycle. So people aren't going to be complaining about the new tax for at least 3 years.
Unless he's listening to Folsom Prison Blues. I don't know.
True. But, you know, you have to remember, people, Cliff Ponte, Pamela Liberté LeBeau, Joe Camara, Steve Long, Derek Viveris, who else is on that? Leo Pelletier, oh my God, Leo Pelletier, there you go. There's a real
Just give them the money.
And Brad Kilby all voted to put a new tax on your bill. All voted to put a new tax on your bill. Mayor Jazel Correa voted to put a new tax on your bill. He fought to put a new tax on your bill. And you elected this guy. You elected these 7 people in the city council who voted to put a new tax on your bill. Regardless of what it may be used for, it's a new tax on your bill so that they have money to play with in the bonding, because they can't fund $6 million in the bonding, because it's $6 million a year for 30 years. Don't go by, well, in 8 years we're going to get rid of it, because we don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'll take a bet on that. I'm a betting man. I'll bet that.
So remember that. Anything's possible.
The views and opinions expressed on any program.
And we're out of time. real fast. Thanks for
angry.
watching.